The call came at the worst possible moment. My phone buzzed on the desk while my boss was halfway through explaining why the last report had numbers that didn't make sense. I glanced down for half a second. His name was on the screen. For a moment, my thumb hovered over the answer button, and then I flipped the phone face down and ignored it. 3 minutes later, I found out why he had called, and that small decision still sits in my mind every time my phone rings. That morning had started like most Tuesdays. I woke up late, rushed through coffee that was too hot, and drove to work thinking about the long list of small problems waiting for me. Nothing dramatic, just the usual office things. Emails, deadlines, quiet pressure that never really goes away. I worked in a small accounting office in Chicago. 12 people, gray cubicles, fluorescent lights that always felt a little too bright. The kind of place where days blur together. My job wasn't difficult, but it required attention. Numbers, spreadsheets, small details that couldn't be wrong. And that week, things had been off. The quarterly report had a few inconsistencies. Nothing catastrophic, but enough that my boss wanted explanations. I had been double-checking everything for 2 days. That's why the call felt inconvenient. The name on the screen was Daniel. We had been friends since college. Not the kind of friends who talked every day, but the kind who stayed in each other's lives quietly. Daniel had a habit though. He called randomly, sometimes for something small, sometimes just to talk. Once he called just to ask if I remembered the name of a pizza place we used to go to in college. So when his name showed up during a meeting, my first thought was simple: this can wait. I remember thinking that very clearly. My boss was standing beside my desk pointing at a spreadsheet. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. Daniel. I hesitated. For a moment, I considered stepping outside to answer, but something about the timing felt inconvenient. I didn't want to interrupt the conversation with my boss, so I flipped the phone face down. Ignored. It stopped ringing after a few seconds, and that should have been the end of it. The meeting continued. Numbers, corrections, small explanations. My boss eventually nodded and moved on to someone else's desk. I picked up my phone again. No voicemail, no text, just a missed call. I remember thinking it was a little unusual. Daniel usually texted if it was important. Still, I didn't worry. I put the phone back on the desk and went back to the spreadsheet. About 2 minutes passed, maybe 3. Then my phone rang again. This time, the name on the screen wasn't Daniel. It was Sarah, his younger sister. That's when something inside me shifted slightly. Sarah had never called me before. Not once. I answered immediately. Hello? There was a pause on the other end. Her voice sounded tight, like she was holding something in. Hey, Irfan, is Daniel with you? The question felt strange. No? Why? Another pause. Then she said something that didn't make sense at first. He called you, right? I looked at the phone screen again. The missed call was still there. Yeah, about 5 minutes ago. There was a long silence. And then she said quietly, he was on his way to your office. I sat up in my chair. What do you mean? He left our place about 20 minutes ago, she said. He said he needed to talk to you about something. That's when the small feeling of inconvenience turned into something else. Confusion. I didn't know he was coming here, I said. He tried calling you again, she said. Did you answer? My stomach tightened slightly. No, I was in a meeting. Another silence. Then she said something that changed the entire shape of the moment. He just got into a car accident. The world didn't stop. That's something people don't talk about. In moments like that, everything around you keeps moving exactly the same. Printers still hum, people still type on keyboards, someone down the hallway laughs at something. But inside your head, everything shifts. Was he okay? I asked. He's conscious, she said. but they're taking him to the hospital. I just thought since he called you." Her voice faded. I stared at a missed call again. 5 minutes earlier. My brain started doing something strange. It replayed the moment when the phone rang. The hesitation, my thumb hovering, the decision to flip the phone over. 3 minutes. That's all it was. 3 minutes between ignoring the call and hearing about the accident. Later that afternoon, I went to the hospital. Daniel had a broken arm, some bruises, and a mild concussion. Nothing life-threatening, thankfully. When I walked into the room, he looked tired, but awake. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey," he said. "Hey." I sat in the chair next to the bed. For a moment, we didn't talk. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my mind since the call. "Why were you coming to my office?" Daniel looked at the ceiling for a second. Then he shrugged slightly. "Okay, that's not entirely true." I waited. He looked at me again. "Do you remember that conversation we had a lunch month about you feeling stuck at work?" I nodded slowly. "I told you about the startup my cousin is building. They were looking for someone with accounting experience." Something clicked in my mind. "You were coming to tell me that?" "Yeah," he said. "I talked to him yesterday. They're hiring. I thought you might want to meet him." For a moment, neither of us spoke. I thought about the missed call again, the meeting, the hesitation. Then Daniel said something quietly. "I almost turned around before the accident," he added. "Why?" "Because I thought maybe you were busy. You didn't answer." That sentence landed differently than everything else. Not heavy, not dramatic, just honest. Driving home that night, my mind kept replaying the day. Not the accident, not the hospital, just that small moment when the phone rang. The strange thing about life is how much weight we put on big decisions, career moves, major purchases, relationships. But sometimes the things that stay with you are the tiny choices that feel meaningless in the moment. Answering a call, sending a message, stopping to listen, or deciding you'll do it later. I realized something uncomfortable that night. When Daniel called, my first instinct wasn't curiosity, it was convenience. This can wait. That assumption felt harmless at the time, but assumptions about time are strange. We behave like moments are guaranteed to repeat themselves, like there's always another chance to respond, another moment to talk, another call later in the day. Most of the time that's true, but not always. And that realization changed something subtle in me. Not dramatically, just quietly. Now when my phone rings, I notice my first reaction, the small calculation we all make without thinking. Is this worth my attention right now? Sometimes the answer is still no. Life is busy, meetings happen, responsibilities matter. But every once in a while, I remember that Tuesday morning, the missed call, the 3 minutes, and the strange truth behind it. Daniel didn't call because something terrible was happening. He called because something good was about to happen. And I almost missed it, not because life was chaotic or dramatic, just because I assumed there would always be another moment. Sometimes, the most powerful life lessons arrive quietly like that. Not as disasters, not as tragedies, but as small reminders about how we move through ordinary days, about how easily we prioritize convenience over connection, and how often we believe time will always give us another chance. That day didn't change my life in some dramatic way, but it did leave me with a question that still follows me sometimes. When the phone rings, when someone reaches out, when a small moment asks for your attention, how often do we assume we can answer later? And how many of those small moments shape our lives before we even realize they mattered?